Moderation is key in all things, including giving away too much. Balance is crucial to maintain value and sustainability. The quote is about the importance of balance in all aspects of life, including giving away too much. While generosity and sharing are positive qualities, if taken to an extreme, they can lead to undesirable consequences. This passage, I believe, best describes what happened to the competitive side of the Riot card game Legends of Runeterra. Legends of Runeterra, or Lore for short, is a card game developed by Riot Games under the development name Project Bacon. The game was first announced by Riot and entered its first closed beta on October 15, 2019, coinciding with the 10th anniversary of League of Legends. And then it was released permanently but still in open beta after being announced during the lead up to Season's 10 start on January 24th, 2020. It was released in full on April 30th of that year. Set in the world of League of Legends, Legends of Runeterra is a strategy card game where skill, creativity, and cleverness determine success. You would choose 2 regions, champions from said regions, and support cards from those said regions as well to make decks out of. The card types are as follows. They have followers, spells, landmarks, and champions, at least as of writing this script. When building a deck, you typically prioritize taking 1 or 2 champions because you can only have 6 champion cards in a deck and 3 copies of each card maximum. After choosing your champions to base your deck around, you then want to add cards that will support your champion to help you obtain victory. Each champion has 2 versions of themselves, with some having 3, a base version and 2 different leveled versions. Each champion has specific requirements to get them to their leveled versions. Requirements like dealing a certain amount of damage, drawing a number of cards, especially in a single turn, or even having no cards in your hand. Once you manage to level up your champion, a level up animation plays, and then your champion gets stronger. This is essentially your win condition. So you'd want to add spells, followers, landmarks of the like to help your deck funnel your champion into victory. Now that we've talked about what the cards are, you're probably wondering how to obtain them. Each card in Legends of Runeterra has a type of rarity: common, rare, epic, and champion rarity. Legends of Runeterra sports multiple types of currency to purchase said cards. Green shards, which allow you to craft any rarity for a certain price. 100 green shards for a common cards, 300 green shards for a rare card, 1200 for an epic, and 3000 for a champion. These are the free-to-play currency. You don't have to spend any actual money on these. You get these by getting chests you can open by doing region challenges and weekly challenges, by honestly just playing the game. Every Thursday at 6 AM Eastern Standard Time, you'll get to open all of the chests that you've accumulated for that week. The next currency is the paid one. These Runeterra coins can get you cosmetics and cards as well. And the last bit of currency, if you can call it that, are wild cards. Each rarity has their own wild card, and you can use 1 wild card to get a single card of that rarity. The game is very free-to-play friendly. A little too friendly. There's almost no incentive to spend actual money on this game. You're guaranteed to get the cards you desire after some time of play. 1 week of grinding the weekly prizes to max can almost get you every card you need for a specific deck, and if you only care for that deck, or if that deck is really good for a long time, your green shards will rack up pretty quickly. I've had over 40,000 shards at one point, and that can make me any deck I want for the next 2 expansions. And that's low compared to the many dedicated players who have hundreds of thousands, if not even millions of shards. I went to the Runeterra Reddit and asked people how many shards they had. The average answer was around 500,000 shards. Some people are in the multi-millions, and others are where I'm at, in the tens of thousands. The average Redditor can make every deck twice and still have enough shards for a new one. This is not good from a business standpoint, but for consumers, it's amazing. And now the question is, how are you making money off of this? The short answer is you're not. In an article, Riot was laying off over 500 people a couple years ago. From the website GameDeveloper.com that was made in January of this year, they managed to get confirmation from Riot. Riot Games stated that Legends of Runeterra dev team is also being downsized and will be moved forward with a renewed focus on a single-player roguelike mode, Path of Champions. The digital collectible card game launched in 2020, but according to Riot, it still costs significantly more to develop and support than it generates in revenue. Runeterra didn't make any money at all. In fact, it was losing money. Plus, every season they had a tournament and the winner would get thousands of dollars, causing Riot to lose more money in the process. A video popped up on my YouTube timeline which caused me to make this one. It was by the YouTube channel Distraction Makers. They are a bunch of just game developers. They go in depth on the downfall of this game, with the meta problem, which I will tackle on later in this video, and the topic that I want to speak on now, spending a ton of money on Legends of Runeterra in general with almost no return. They stated that the Riot devs have spent over $10,000 to $15,000 for a single illustration. There are over 45,000 cards in this game, plus the skins for the champions and their level up animations. Riot was spending a lot of money to make the game look good, and they succeeded. The game is beautiful. It is by far the best looking game Riot has. The champion designs for Runeterra are far superior to the ones in League of Legends. The animations during the champion level ups are all so sick. This is the best looking card game out, and it's also the most free to play friendly. Which, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this, is the reason why the game fell. Card games work because it's not easy to get all of the cards. People have to spend money to get them, and they roll for them, almost like your modern day gacha. Supply and demand. With the cards being incredibly easy to get, the average player has no reason to spend any money on the game. Therefore, it isn't making any money. Plus, the game is incredibly expensive to make and maintain. The insane art for thousands of cards do not come cheap. This is a case of the players kind of killing a beloved game. People scream and cry for free-to-play games to only have cosmetics be the thing that you can purchase in a game with actual money. Finally, we have one, and we don't make up for it. I purchased some champion skins, and I also purchased battle passes, stages, and pets, but I didn't go crazy on it. And I know a lot of other people did the same. Probably spent even less. Again, no incentive to purchase them. Why would I? The original art for every single card looks fine. Plus, their animations are still very beautiful to gaze at. The next thing I want to talk about that I believe caused the downfall of this game is the meta and the lack of balancing certain types of cards. I'm going to go in order of what I believe to be weakest to strongest meta destroyers. Mind you, every deck that I'm going to mention and explain were once the strongest deck at some point. It's just that some eras were worse than others. Every card type has a certain keyword that makes them all unique. There are different types of spells. We have slow spells, which can only be played once per interaction. A fast spell, which can be played during a slow spell and will go first. A burst spell, which can be played at any point during an interaction and will resolve immediately, and you can still make your turn afterwards. Then you have follower types. Certain followers have keywords that give them a specific effect. Some followers have effects that make them turn invisible and can only be blocked by other invisible cards, and cards that can see invisible cards. This keyword is called elusive. Elusive cards normally are very weak, so it's not that strong. There are cards that will attack before the blocking card gets to retaliate. The keyword for this is quick attack. There are a lot more cards in the game, but explaining them all would take 10 minutes alone, and my average watch time is about 2 minutes, so I don't want to do that to you guys. But the keyword I'm putting focus on right now is called Scout. This keyword is simple. If only the units with this keyword attack, you can make a second attack this turn. The terminology for it is called Rally. It's not hard to guess that this type of playstyle is incredibly strong. The ability to attack multiple times in a single turn will never not be strong. So adding multiple cards that abuse the system will force the meta to follow suit, and multiple champions abuse the rally system as well. But the champion that I believe views the rally system a lot better than others is Vayne. Vayne was a very strong card. Her whole kit revolved around equipping cards onto units and forcing them to attack, causing Scout to activate and giving you a second attack. This can happen pretty early too. It was hard to counter a playstyle like this, and if you paired it with Aatrox, you had super strong cards to attack whenever they liked. And if you used a card that had Scout and attacked on your opponent's turn, you could attack a second time then as well. It was a very aggressive playstyle. You'd fill your board up with very strong units, and they only got stronger because they were equipped with giant cards that made them even bigger. And then you had Aatrox with his group of cards who were also just naturally really strong. So you made them even stronger, and then they could attack you whenever the person felt like it. Vayne's reign was a tough one, and almost a little terrible one too for certain card players. She could, like I said, she could go at you wild and honestly with little to no punishment. She caused a lot of players to just not want to play the game because she was very annoying to deal with. But sadly, not as annoying as the next one that I'm going to talk about. The second one I want to make mention of is Lissandra Trundle. Lissandra Trundle is a deck that caused way more people pain than it should have. It abused way more mechanics than it also should have, and it made a cool system really unfair, and they had to do something about it. The problem though wasn't even with Lissandra or Trundle, it was with what happens when Lissandra levels up. Lissandra level 1 is a pretty normal champion, even in her level 2. The problem is, like I said, when she levels up, however, she adds a card to your hand. This card is called the Watcher, a 17 mana card with 11 attack and 17 defense. This would normally be impossible to summon because you only have a maximum of 10 unit mana, 13 if you are going to use your spells. But if it wasn't for the card stating if you summon 4 or more 8+ units, I cost 0. It being strong also wasn't the problem. The problem was its second effect. Whenever it attacks, it obliterates your opponent's deck. Obliterating a card makes sure that it can never be used again. Obliterating normally happens to a single card in play or in a person's hand. Destroying an entire deck with no way to counter it was impossible to deal with. Lissandra Trundle's weakness was it took a little time for the setup to work, but it was very consistent. So you built the deck to slow down the game enough for you to just win the game automatically. Its weakness was waiting for the combo to show up, and if you were just a little bit unlucky, the person could take that as an advantage and win. But it was very rare for that to happen. These pale in comparison to the next two decks that I want to talk about, Samira Fizz and the infamous Azir Irelia. Samira Fizz is a deck that was hyper aggressive, even compared to other aggressive decks. The two champion cards are low cost, costing 1 and 2 mana respectively. Their support is also low cost as well. Fizz is fine by himself, but he found his perfect match when Samira was released. A champion that rewards you heavily for damaging your opponent's nexus. Her kit revolved around this keyword called Plunder, where the cards get powerful effects if you hit the nexus before they get summoned. Sometimes it'll increase their stats, draw cards, or buff other cards. Samira herself isn't a plunder card. She's a quick attack unit, whose level up conditions require you to play 6 cards before it's your turn to attack. And to help her get her to that point, Riot Games gave her a lot of low cost burst and focus cards. Remember, burst cards are unreactable. When you play them, your opponent has no choice but to watch you do that. And when you finally level up Samira, it doesn't stop. She gains increased stats and the card text stating that if you play 6 cards, you rally. And it doesn't have a cap. With support cards like Stylish Shot, which is a focus card that refreshes itself every time a unit hits the Nexus, and Pirouette, which deals 1 to anything and stuns a card, Samira can go hard really fast. And with the support of Fizz, who has cards that can refill spell mana and hit your Nexus really quickly, and even buff your units after you play spells, Samira was one of the strongest cards to hit the meta. She would take you down in an instant. Most matches did not last longer than 5 rounds. It almost gave people the PTSD of the next broken deck. And it also showed that Riot really didn't know how to balance the rally mechanic, because this is the second card that abuses it, and they do it really well. And then we have the undisputed champions of ruining the fun for everyone, Azir and Irelia. These two are by far one of the strongest cards in Legends of Runeterra. By themselves, they're okay, but if you pair them together, they're unstoppable. Even after plenty of nerfs, those two cards together are still insane. So much so that once Riot implemented card rotations, Azir and Irelia are almost never in the same rotation to make sure they didn't rule the meta with an Iron Fist again. So what's so bad about them? Well, let me explain. Azir is a 3-cost champion, and every time you attack, he summons a small unit to attack with your pre-existing units, who can hit the Nexus twice if possible, but after that, it dies. To level up Azir, you need to summon 12 units. It was less on release, but because of this deck, they had to nerf him. And when Azir's leveled, his added effect was whenever you summon a unit, give him and that unit +1 attack for the turn. He's pretty strong, but manageable alone. And then you have Irelia, who is also relatively low cost, and her card effect is whenever she is summoned or round start, if you are able to attack, you get a card called Flawless Duet. Flawless Duet summons 2 super small damaging units called Blades to attack your opponent. And to level up Irelia, you need to attack with a certain amount of units. After fulfilling the requirement, Irelia would become slightly stronger, and she had a bonus effect that whenever you attack, she gives you a card called Blade Surge. A 0-cost card that swapped Irelia's position with another ally. Irelia's support cards also flooded the fields with blades whenever they're summoned, and this was the problem. Those blades count as units. When you summoned 1 follower, they summoned 2 blades. That's 3 units for Azir's condition and 2 for Irelia's. Irelia super turbo leveled Azir, and Azir's support made them stronger. Being able to summon expendable attacking units during any player's turn that'll get stronger after a certain point. They abused the concept of rally and aggro without needing any of those 2 cards. Plus, the regions that they are from catered towards slow gameplay that kept them alive and stopping your opponent from killing them. They could play really fast and have the tools to prevent you from stopping this. To this day, this deck is still considered to be one of the worst decks to ever go against. I even asked my friends what their opinion was on this deck. One of my good friends who made the thumbnail for this video stopped playing Legends of Runeterra in its entirety because Riot Games could not balance this deck correctly. I also asked one of my friends, who's much better than me at this game, for her opinion on the various metas. She also played during the beta, so she has a lot more knowledge than I do. She expressed her joy for the game during the beta, when there was no meta, No one found anything that was broken, or at least broken enough to abuse, so everybody was able to experiment and have a fun time due to everything being new. The meta she found the least enjoyable was when Riot introduced the Runeterra cards, and this is honestly when Runeterra's popularity started to dip a little bit. Runeterra champions are unique champions that don't belong to any region. They themselves are the regions. With an origin that defines their playstyles, cards like Jhin, Bard, and Evelynn have origins that let you add very specific cards from every region into their deck. Jhin lets you add cards with active skills. Bard lets you add cards that add chimes to your deck, and Evelynn adds anything that puts a husk into your deck. We also have cards like Aatrox and Kayn, who are both Runeterra champions, and they worked incredibly well because they complement each other. Kayn has cards that are called cultists, and they all do a certain amount of things. And if you summon 3 cultist cards, you get to just add Kayn to your hand. And Aatrox is a Darkin, and his whole thing are Darkins are equipments. You can add every Darkin card to your deck. And when you play 3 Darkin cards, you get to add Aatrox to your deck. These two became meta very quickly, and they also countered a good amount of meta strategies. They countered burn and aggro, because they could go wide and heal you and themselves every time they attacked you. And they only got stronger when Aatrox leveled. Aatrox is a giant unit, and whenever you summon him, he has a spell card that turns every single card equipped with a Darkin card into that Darkin, and they gain those stats and abilities. Those cards became incredibly strong very fast. Aatrox and Kayn were a card duo that was just meant for each other. It was a match made in heaven. Again, not as bad as Azir Aurelia because it took too long for that to happen, but it was still very, very good. Then you have a champion like Ryze, who also, being a Runeterra champion, gave you the ability to put any non-targetable burst and focus spells into your deck. He was really strong because his win condition was vastly different than the rest. Every turn, Ryze would create cards and place them into your deck. You would fill your deck with many draw cards and sustain cards to draw them. Once played, they summon specific landmarks that would power up Ryze. And once you have all 4 of those unique landmarks and attack, Ryze would instantly destroy the Nexus, and you would win the duel. Almost like Exodia from Yu-Gi-Oh! People hated these metas, and it killed the desire to play for some. With Riot having a hard time trying to balance the game, and they're already losing a ton of money on it, they threw 2 Hail Marys. One was successful while the other dug them a bigger hole. On November 8th of 2021, Riot Games announced a game mode for Runeterra, Path of Champions, a single-player roguelike experience that would ease new players into the game and give people who played this game for the lore what they were looking for. It was successful. A little too successful. Far more people were playing that than the PvP, and the PvP scene took an unintentional hit from this design choice. So much so that Riot is focusing on Path of Champions. It's almost the main focus of the game. There's almost no one playing PvP now. Most of the player base migrated to that or just stopped playing in general. It also didn't help that a year later, Riot Games announced card rotations. For a whole year, certain cards will not be playable in the main format of the game. It was to try and help with the balancing issues, and sadly, it didn't work the way they wanted. It made the game stale. A lot of fan favorite cards and cards that would counter the new metas were rotated out. People didn't want to play it, so they went to Path of Champions. And with Riot's announcements of pulling focus away from PvP, it caused a lot of people to call the game dead. No more dedicated tournaments. No more special events. The question is it dead? Well, yes and no. PvP is certainly done for until Riot does something about it to bring it back, but the game itself is still doing fine. Path of Champions is where most people play now. The player base is still there, just not playing PvP. I attempted to play PvP and the average queue time used to be 3 to 4 seconds. Now they're 2 to 3 minutes. And especially and it's just to face off against what seems to be bots and people who slow play on purpose to try and force you to surrender. The PvP is most definitely dead, but Runeterra as a whole is not. And it's a little sad. I really enjoyed playing this game. I used to play the game a bunch when I was younger, and my friends and I would go into calls and just talk about metas and try to see if we can shake something up with ourselves. It was a good time, and we had so much fun. I even played the game at work in my free time. It was a blast to play, and I was so happy whenever new cards were released. The trailers were so awesome to look at every single time they showed them. Seeing the new champions go up with their new level up animations and the music to go with them, and the voice lines were just so insane. This game is a person who loves lore and aesthetics. This is the dream. But now the PvP is gone, and now it feels kind of sad. Because my friends and I were all competitive players. We all like to play things competitively. But with no competitive, it's just, what's the point? I do play Runeterra off and on, just Path of Champions whenever I get bored, honestly. But not as much as I used to. It is a little sad to watch this game go the way it did. If you watched this video until the end, I truly thank you. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. I think I'm going to make my channel focus mainly on video essays on the death of games and game series as a whole. I'm going to stream more, and it's probably going to be on Twitch, and I just made a Twitter account. It's called Not From St. Louis. Please feel free to follow me and have a chat with me there. I'm going to make a Discord as soon as I hit 100 subscribers to really start growing my community. With that being said, I've been Elijah St. Louis. Thank you for watching. And next time there's a nice free-to-play fighting game, or just free-to-play game in general, try to keep it alive. Especially if they're as generous as Runeterra. If there's no incentive to buy the cosmetics, try buying some, because the card art still looks beautiful. I know that nobody needs to buy it, but it's still a thing. But yeah, thank you for watching, and have a good one.